this is it's mental podcast. Today we have our guest Beer. Beer is a storyteller I met at the Berlin Mental Health Festival, but I will let him to introduce himself. Beer.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Bill. And, there's so many different ways I could go in introducing myself. I think I often start by just saying I'm a recovering addict living with bipolar, the rapid cycling kind. And, but of course, that is not the most interesting thing about a person who has mental health conditions. So but I have become an advocate, which a lot of people do. They share their story to help others. And the power of that is kind of unparalleled, both in myself when I've seen other people sharing their story and how much it's helped me in my journey. It gave me less shame, more confidence that I could change and be a better person. Not a better person, it doesn't mean you're a bad person, but that I could learn how to enjoy life more. And then the same thing when I do shows or tell a story and I reveal those things, people, people will come up and they'll say, I'll sometimes have people like see me 2 weeks later at a coffee shop, and they'll come up and say, thank you for your story, because they know that feeling, and it's not expressed very often in our society. So when somebody expresses it in a way they can relate to, and that makes them realize they're not alone, they're not freaks, and their life isn't hopeless, then they really appreciate it. So that's a big part of what I'm doing now.
Wow. So you talk about you are a recovering addict. What kind of substance were you addicted to?
Hard drugs. So I started with, marijuana in my teens, like a lot of people. I joined the chess team in my high school, and they smoked a lot of marijuana.
Really?
The chess team knew how to party, and we were pretty good. We were second in state. The
I saw the chess people use cocaine.
That would probably, we might have won state if we were using cocaine instead of smoking weed. And then later, in my 20s, late 20s, early 30s, around there, I was really kind of out of control with my bipolar, which was untreated. And that's when I started on hard drugs. So, crack cocaine and heroin, shooting heroin. So I went all the way to the hard drugs.
Wow, you were doing heroin?
Yeah.
How long did it last?
I didn't do heroin that long. I would say in terms of like daily use, not more than a few weeks. But in terms of how long I was using it on and off, I would say it was another like maybe 4 years total.
So you spaced it out like what do you mean 4 years? You mean like during these 4 years you do it
I mean,
every a few months?
the heroin, it would just depend on who I was partying with and if they had heroin. Yeah, I didn't seek it out as much. It was more like if somebody had it, then they would have me do it. They would often just, people want you to do what they're doing. Like people want you to feel the same as them. So I think that was a big part of it. But it's not the worst feeling in the world. I mean, obviously it's a destroyer of lives. So I don't mean to be cheeky and say, but it's fun, because it's really. But it was not an unpleasant thing. That's for sure.
How did you get a hookup on crack cocaine and heroin?
Um, it was a woman. uh, Two maybe, yeah. Yeah. So that was really it. I was very depressed. I was very suicidal at that time in my life, and I had just been coming off of I had left my wife, and that's a longer story that we won't get into tonight. But I had been really in bad shape. I had untreated bipolar, and I was living in extremes, and I was very suicidal, and I didn't care. You know, there's an attitude sometimes of that people who know suicidal ideation, and if you're listening to this, you don't need to be freaked out. Like, I'm good, I've been through this, and when I talk about these dark emotions, it's not sad to me. It's just my life. It's like other people talk about, you know, they had a car that broke down and they fixed it or whatever. It's not. Yeah, so I just want the listeners to know this may strike some of you as heavy, but to me, it's really not. So, so that said, you know, I was very suicidal, and sometimes suicidal people can get this attitude of, well, I'm going to be dead soon anyways, so why not do, you know, fill in the blank, do this thing. And that was kind of where I was at. I mean, I really thought I was going to be dead, and so it didn't matter.
And when were you diagnosed with bipolar?
I was diagnosed with bipolar, I think a year and a half or two after I started doing the hard drugs. So then I went in for drug treatment, and while I was in therapy, well, I say I went in for drug treatment. There was a little bit of nudge from law enforcement, you know, in the area, and but I found a therapist I really liked, and he diagnosed me as bipolar, and then I got you know, several more diagnoses over the years of bipolar. And I didn't take it that seriously at first. And this is something that, you know, when I look back at my life and, like, you know, what were what were the poor choices, which is a lot, right? Like, I sometimes think that I should have, like, my, you know, start a poor choices club, like we should have our own jackets or something, because you know, but one of the poor choices I made was when I was diagnosed with bipolar. I was so arrogant. This is very common for people with bipolar. I was very arrogant, and I thought, okay, I don't have a problem that I can't fix myself. I was like, I've got this, don't you people? You know, I mean, everybody else might need help, but I don't, because I just thought I was so brilliant that I could, like, think my way out of it. But it turns out that I wasn't able to. And so things got worse, and I had a, you know, I had a pretty rough go for a lot longer than necessary.
What's how it feels like to have bipolar? What's the main symptoms?
The main symptoms for me may not be the same for everybody, but there are sort of two extremes. One is mania or hypomania, and we can talk about that difference in if you're curious. Well, you probably know this, but we'll talk about it more. And then the other is you know, depression, very, very severe depression. And so with the mania and the hypomania, it's like the hypomania, you feel very good and very invincible and very energetic. And, like, for example, and your mind is working very, very fast, and you can be very creative and very efficient. But if you can focus, which isn't always that easy. But one thing that I learned, and it took me a while to learn this, like a lot of years, that when you, if people are saying to me, hey, Bill, you're talking really fast, that's a sign I might be getting kind of hypomanic. Or sometimes I'm like, why is everybody talking so slow? Like, my brain is working so fast. It's like, why are you people not keeping up? When I'm hypomanic. And then mania is a little bit different to me. You know, this is, I don't know if these are entirely scientific definitions, but I can have paranoid delusions. So I can think people are plotting against me when they're not. And it's not common. It doesn't happen a lot. But it takes me a while it's taken a while over the years to just understand that my brain does that, and then to compensate for it. So now, if I start to think somebody's, you know, plotting against me in some way, like a friend or a coworker, I'm like, Bill, did you know this is a thing your brain does. It's not real. So, but it's taken a while for me to, you know, because you got to go through, like, first off admitting that you have a brain that can do that, and that it does things that you can't see when it's doing them. So it can take a while. So yeah, that was my journey around that. So, and then the depressive end is very depressive, right? It's everything is hopeless. You think you are a terrible person, and you think everything is hopeless, and you want to die, and you contemplate it a lot. Because for people who suicidally ideate, it is a relief to imagine death. And in fact, and not everybody gets that, so I'm not recommending suicidal ideation. I'm just saying this is a common thing that happens. And in fact, I had that same therapist who first diagnosed me. When I first saw him, I told him that I woke up every morning picturing killing myself. And I won't say the method, because sometimes we're taught in advocacy not to say those exact details, because they can be triggering for people. I don't know if that's a valid point or not, but for that reason I don't. And but he said to me, and this was so powerful. He said, yeah, well, it's giving you some relief, so go ahead and do it. And I wasn't expecting that, because everybody up to that point had said, this is terrible, it must stop, you can't ideate. And I am not advocating ideating. I'm not a doctor. So if you're listening to this, please don't take this as a sign that you should dwell on dark thoughts.
But I read some studies, they also say actually talking about suicide, about the details of suicide, actually make people less likely to suicide.
Is that right?
Yeah. Like, so as a friend, instead of say, okay, I know you are suicidal, let's talk everything, but not that, it's actually not happening. Instead, you say, oh, you want to suicide, why you want, what you want, and what's your plan, and to normalize it, and to destigmatize it,
Really?
actually make you, the person, less likely to actually do it.
It's a fine line, because what happens, and I think you're right, and if I knew I was talking to people who, well, that's a really good point. Thank you. I'm gonna think about that. I will say also, when you're speaking to a group as a public speaker or a storyteller or
different.
a comedian, then it's different, because what you have is like, whatever percentage of people who can identify, and then you have a large percentage of people who are just horrified. And I learned this when I started doing this one-man show, Becoming More or Less Crazy. And the first times I did it, I would tell the story of this suicide attempt where I was in my closet, and I had built a noose out of an electrical cord, and I would. This is so dark, but because you gave me permission, I'm going to share it.
But no, I didn't give you permission. I said it's good you talk with friends, not like in public. Okay, let's move on.
So, but the point is, right, that I would tell this story, and I realized quickly. You can't do that for the public, because it horrifies people. So now I generally just skip over that. People don't need to know that. They don't want to know it. And so I generally just spare them that, because you have to communicate well with people, you have to give them information in a way they can receive it. And if they're freaked out by what you just said, they can't receive whatever else you're giving them.
I think it's also about how you say it. For example, there's a comedian, Neil Sofer. He's a Jewish guy in Berlin doing dark comedy. He talks about his suicidal thoughts a lot, but the way he talks about it is like his suicidal thoughts keeps asking him to do it. He start to like have a discussion with the suicidal thoughts and said, okay, how about let's eat a pizza before do it, and then have some conversation, make some jokes with the suicidal thoughts. I think that's different than describe how much you want it, how much you.
Well, but see, I had jokes in there, but I've learned not to. Even with jokes, you can't go that deep. But that said, I think how you do it is really important, and also part of that is putting jokes in, but part of it is just being really, really comfortable with it, right? So that you're talking about it, but you're not freaked out about it. So that if people see you being comfortable and okay, that helps them a lot.
Yeah. My next question: how long took it you to becoming sober?
14 years from when I started using till I got completely sober. I would say the last maybe 6 years I didn't use that much, but then it took 14 years total to get completely sober.
May I ask how old are you?
Yeah, I'm 58.
And when you start to try to get sober?
I think I started to try to get sober just as soon as I started using, which was around, I'm not sure if I have the numbers right here. This is adding up. Anyways, I'm not going to do the math right now, but which was around age 29, 30, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but right away I wanted to quit, and it's hard to quit, you know. This is why it's addiction.
And how did you get sober? What did you do?
I finally went to 12-step meetings, and I went to an outpatient program. So it's like 5 nights a week you go to this program with a small group of people, and then you're going to 12-step meetings, at least 3 a week. And then I found a home group, which means one group that you go to every week, and you get to know the people. And so it was the community. I don't like the 12 steps myself. I find them annoying. They're very puritanical. But it didn't matter because it was the people, really, that made a difference.
Is the 12 steps program the same as the AA meeting?
Yeah, it's just a different group of people who do it for drugs called Narcotics Anonymous.
Are they the same program, like 12 steps and the AA?
They're based on the same principles. They're not the same program.
Okay. And you are from US, right?
Yeah.
And to do the outpatient treatment, was it affordable for you?
I had health insurance, so it was affordable. It cost me maybe $300 for like I think 5 months of intense patient treatment, and then another 7 months of once a month or something, once a week. I forget.
I heard so many horror stories about the U.S. healthcare, but this doesn't sound bad at all.
Well, I had a good job because I was working most of the time. I was able to keep good jobs barely after a while, and sometimes I did lose jobs, but you know, I worked in tech and I was largely able to keep working. And if you have a good job, you're in the privileged class, right? You're in the group of people who have a company that's paying you, and they're paying for your health insurance. And if they're paying for good health insurance, then you get that for pretty cheap. If you don't have health insurance, then you're in for something like that. I don't even know, probably minimum $10,000 for an outpatient program, but it could have been more. And then if you're going inpatient, that can be, you know, $12,000, $20,000 for a month inpatient. And that's just unaffordable for the average person. Yeah.
Wow, that's scary. So 14 years, what was the how it looks like for the 14 years journey?
You know, it was increasingly lonely, I think. Yeah, it was increasingly lonely, you know, and I kind of, yeah, that's what it was. You know, I became more and more addicted, and my life began to fall apart more and more. And then after a certain number of years, I kind of lost everything, and then spent a few years being just really, really poor, just working odd little jobs to get by, and barely being able to pay rent and buy enough food to eat. And that was very, very hard and very humbling. And then slowly I was able to rebuild my career. And a few years after that, after I came out of that phase, I finally got clean entirely. So it was a pretty common trajectory. I think this is what a lot of people who've gotten clean from addiction go through, right? It's like they start out and they're with a lot of people, or it's kind of a social thing, and then it becomes lonelier and lonelier. And the lonelier you get, the more you want the drugs, and the more shame you feel, so the more you want the drugs. And then eventually it takes over your life, and you can't really maintain your life anymore. And then you lose everything, and then you come back. If you're one of the lucky ones, right? A lot of people don't come back, and I think it's really luck. I don't think I had like any special abilities. I was lucky, and I was fortunate. I had the means because of my job to go to treatment, which a lot of people don't have that option. And so there was a lot of things available to me that aren't available to a lot of people. So it was just a combination of luck that I didn't die, because a lot of addicts, I overdosed. I tried suicide attempts, and I got through it without dying, but a lot of people don't. And what's the difference? There is no difference. Just some people, luck of the draw, I think. And but I made it through, and that was good. And then I started telling stories and became a public speaker, and my life got a lot better after that. I was able to. Everything is very different when you're. When you're clean, and you haven't really been clean your whole life. And sometimes I still want to get high, but I don't.
When you say clean, are you clean from everything?
Clean from everything. Yeah. Yeah. I don't even have CBDs. Yeah. I have not had any drugs for like over 13 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's weird.
How and how's the bipolar? Do you take a medication?
I'm taking one medication in a low dose right now, and I've taken bigger medications in the past of higher doses and multiple meds, and then I went for a number of years without any. I think that my feeling about medication has always been, if you're doing okay, this is the rule I will tell myself: if I'm doing okay without them, then I don't need to be on medications. If I'm really consistently not able to get myself into a decent state, then I should go ahead and take medications. And that's why I started medication again just really early this year. I gave myself, I had a particular thing that was going on. I gave myself 3 months to deal with it, and I didn't. And I was like, okay, then I'll go on medication for a while. So, yeah, I've done both. I think that a lot of the way I deal with it, though, is now that I've learned how my brain works and what mania is and how depression works, like I don't trust my brain very much at all. I'm like, oh, my brain's doing this, or things like that. Like you get a distance and you watch your brain, and you're observing what it's doing, but not always acting on it. It's like, this will pass. Right now I feel like everything's hopeless, but in a couple hours or in the morning I'm going to feel great. So you start to learn that things will shift.
And with bipolar, do you always either mania or depressed? Are you able to stay in between?
Yeah, I'm able to stay in between. Not forever. I mean, I will get, I would say I'm used to mood swings on a pretty regular basis. They're very common to me. It's very normal to me to be very up or very down, without a lot of explanation. It's not always based on things that are happening. But there's a good amount of in-between time as well.
What's the average in between time you have now?
I would say it's, and I've never really thought about it this way, but I would say it's probably about maybe, 25% up, 25% down, to different degrees, and then about half time in between. But It's hard to say because I don't map it out. Some people chart what they're doing. I don't really do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and how do you know like you are mania or depressed? Like, do you have some like indications to really have a clear picture of yourself?
Yeah. Depression, it's easy. I can feel it in my body. I could also analyze my thoughts, but it's very easy to feel in my body because really, we think of these emotions in terms of how our thoughts are, but if you step back and say, okay, what's going on in my body, you can feel the emotions as well. At least I can. And, but with mania, it's more certain kinds of thoughts than I'm like, okay, this is slightly manic. And it's usually, I don't worry about it unless I'm dealing with people. Then I'm like, I need to learn how to deal with people in a way that is acceptable to them. Because if you think that you're, all these magical things are going to happen and you're invincible, and you share that, you're just kind of can we cuss on this show?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just kind of an asshole. You're just being a dick. And if you think that somebody is plotting against you who isn't, then you're just going to hurt their feelings and maybe create distance and lose a friendship, which I did lose some friendships before I learned about that. I mean, I since regained them, like, years later, I'm like, hey, I was a dick and I didn't know it. and now I'm still a dick, but at least I know it and I can compensate for it. I mean, I'm not a dick all the time, but like those thoughts happen and I'm not perfect. And so when I start to have those kinds of thoughts, that's really when I know I'm manic. Also, my mind is racing, or I want to send an angry email. I'm like pissed off and I'm like, I need to send this angry email right now. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's a sign that you're manic. And so I'll be like, Bill,
And between manic, like for example, this manic is like once it happens, does it it always lasts for a long period of time, or is like a switch between depression and the manic on a daily basis?
So it can be daily. It's not usually daily. But yeah, it has its own momentum. So if you're manic and you realize you're manic, you can't pull it down just by realizing it. What you can do is compensate. So if I'm manic and I like want to talk a bunch and my brain is working super fast, I learn to just sit back, be kind of quiet, say things once in a while, don't talk super fast. I learn how to compensate so that I can, interact with people in a way that's pleasant for them, even though what's going on inside of me is like, pretty, not insane, but it's pretty intense.
And well, and with bipolar, I don't know much about bipolar.
Yeah.
Is bipolar like curable or?
Well, curable isn't really the right term. So by the way, I have a particular type of bipolar, which is rapid cycling. There's bipolar 1, where people will go into mania and depression for like months at a time. And this is a more intense form of mania. People will live in a very delusional state for many months. And
this is type 1.
That's type 1.
Yeah.
Type 2 is basically a much more rapid cycling kind of bipolar, where that's not lasting as long. And the mania is usually it's hypomania, which a lot of overachievers kind of live in hypomania. You know, those people who are like, well, I got my master's degree, I ran a triathlon, and then I wrote a book and a screenplay, what did you do last summer? Those people are usually just operate in hypomania all the time. So for some people, it's a very powerful place to live. And then they just recently started talking about new rapid cycling kind of bipolar, which it kind of explains more what goes on with me. Because when they diagnosed me with bipolar 2, they said, you're actually a little bit more rapid cycling than the actual definition, but there's nothing that close. So now they've actually acknowledged there are people like me who will go, can go pretty rapidly back and forth.
And you said lots of people are actually functioning on hypomania. Like for you, when you are in that state, is something actually pleasant? Or is something, because for me it sounds like it sounds exactly like those people who's on cocaine.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you should say that, right? I think it's not unlike that. So yeah, it's kind of pleasant. Yeah, hypomania is kind of pleasant.
Do you like it?
Um, Not always, but sometimes I do. Yeah, I mean, the problem with it is I guess you get so it can become so intense that you just want to destroy it with like, overeating or having a cigarette or whatever your self-destructive habits are. Like you kind of want to, it makes you want to cut into it. Or not, maybe not you, but I mean, because you're not dealing with it, but people who live with it can make them want to cut into it and make them lose their judgment. So it's unpleasant. But if I'm like sitting down writing or working or doing something, it can, and I'm just, then it can be very, very pleasant. Yeah.
So do you have any control on if you are depressed or mania? Because if you are depressed, do you have a ways to get you to hypomania state?
There are two things. One is if I'm depressed, I do have ways of getting out of it. But if I want to be in hypomania, it's hard to get there just because I want to be. However, sometimes, this, you're a creative person. I mean, it's a very creative state, can be. Like a lot of creative people are manic, bipolar. And so, if I'm able to focus on creating, then I'm just like in that groove and I can create and create and create and nothing else matters. Which can be a problem in relationships because what happens is you become so focused on the thing that you're completely fulfilled by this sort of the manic fantasy or the creative action or whatever it is, and people become less important for that little bit of time. And you have to have people who are like, this is a thing that goes on with them, and they're going to be distant from me for an hour or a half day or whatever it is, maybe a little longer. And that's going to happen regularly. And some people have their own internal thing where they're like, I can be okay with that. And some people do it themselves. They're like, I need this happens to me too. But otherwise it can be a problem, and you can go, going down, of course, is not generally fun for partners, but if you have somebody who understands or who is also bipolar, then at least you can understand each other and you can talk about those things with no shame, no stigma.
Over the years, what's the best tools you learn to maintain or let's say manage your bipolar disorder?
I would say there are a couple of tools, several actually. One is meditation, just focusing. You understand what meditation is. There are different kinds, but meditation is very helpful. Another is kind of a different way of viewing existence. So that you're less attached to what happens in the world or what's going on in your thoughts. This is kind of espoused by many different philosophical, methods or angles, but you certainly see it in Buddhism or in East Indian type of scriptures. I read a lot of old Sanskrit or scriptural stuff or polyscriptural stuff, because the ancient sort of this distilled wisdom is it gets me high, and it provides me relief. So that's not going to work for most people. Most people are like, that's dumb. And that's okay. If it's not working for them, they don't need to do it, right? Everybody finds their own path. But for me, this has been critical. So that's a thing. Sometimes I can sit back and just say, okay, this is not, like, let's experience this as a sensation in my body instead of thoughts. Sometimes I can just tap myself and say, hey, these thoughts are wrong, like, or happily they're wrong, and then I can try to start to replace with happier thoughts. So from depression point of view, those are my main tools, and it's kind of constant work. I gave a TED talk a few years back about kind of about mental health, how to connect with depressed friends. And then that got, a fair amount of views and attention. And I started to think I was better at dealing with depression than I was, just because I had this talk. And it took me a while to realize, like, no, it's work, but if you know how to do the work, it's not so bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I resonate with that also for my depression. I feel right now like I wouldn't say I'm depressed, but I there are so many things I need to do every day to keep myself in this balance. And hours of work every day of things normally I wouldn't do. Like I journal, like I do sports, I meditate, and to observe myself. They are all work I put in every day to make sure that I'm in a good mental space. And if I discontinue, it can kick back very soon.
I would be very curious to know how you came to develop that. Like, there must have been a time when you weren't doing that, and then you decided, okay, I need to start doing things to manage my depression.
Yeah. I think that's a very good question. I was diagnosed with depression, and since then I've been battling with it. There's up and downs, but I was very unstable. Like I could easily get into breakdown for days.
Can I ask a question? I don't want to interrupt you, but when were you first diagnosed with depression?
It was 2018.
Okay, thank you.
I was suicidal for months, and I couldn't get up. It was really, really bad. But after that, looking back, I realized I was depressed of my whole life. I just didn't know what it is.
I love that you said that, because it's funny. I had the same thing. There was a point where I realized that, we're like, this isn't normal. Because to you as a kid, growing up, you think it's normal because that's all you know. Like, this is what living feels like, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually you're like, not everybody feels like like life is pointless and they're doomed.
Yeah. Since I could remember, I was like, I wanted to kill myself so many times, and I was like, I'm so not happy. But I didn't know other people are having fun. I didn't know this is not normal. Like a little child should be happy. I didn't know.
One time I heard on the radio a statistic that it was like, they were like, yes, and somehow it came out that like less than 5% of people, less than 5% of people have suicidal thoughts, like one a year or more. And I thought, no. That's backwards. It has to be 5% or less never have them, and the other 95% do. And then I realized, I'm the one. I see. I've been misinterpreting this the whole time.
Yeah.
So, so you you took action. You were diagnosed, and then you did you get help? And then they said do these things. Did you research it? Did you just know that these things would be helpful?
No, like when I got diagnosed, the doctor just gave me medication, and I didn't have other like means of support until I got therapy. But my therapist, um, she listened me to talk. That's already super helpful. But she never told me how can I learn how to deal with it, like what method I can adopt. But over the years, like it's been a very slow process, like which really solidified this year, because this year I start to realize that I have undiagnosed ADHD, more like ADD. I'm not that hyper. And then I realized, wow, I think I have ADD, and I start to read lots of books about ADD, and I start to adopt the tools for ADD, and it works magic on me. And with ADD, like books, they give really like clear guidelines. Like you suck at an organization, you need to do those small things to help yourself organize. And you have too much energy, you have to do sports every day. And you are messy, so you plan your day in this way, that way. And it really helped me. And I also read a few books. So now I have a 10 steps morning routine. And
A 10-step morning routine?
Yeah.
Can I ask what it is? Because I could use this. I'm partly just interested in people's stories, but now I'm interested in practical tips that I might be able to use, if you don't mind sharing with me your routine.
Yeah, sure. Like I developed this routine based on three things. Like one is a method called bullet journal method. It's a type of way to make notes and organize your day, and also it's combined of mindfulness. So it's just a way of making notes, and it really helps me. Then on top of that, I read a book called Driven to Distraction. It's about a book about depression, ADD. And then I read a book called Atomic Habits. It teaches you how to build a habit, and it's really eye-opening, because it told the science behind habits. And I realized, wow, they say like in order to keep a habit, the key is to make it as easy as possible. And I realized, oh, my whole life, 30 years, I did it all wrong, because in Chinese mindset, it's all about willpower. It's about doing like really boring thing, like hard things, and you just push yourself. And if you cannot do that, you are a piece of shit. So, and I realized, oh, of course I was always depressed, because I forced myself to do things so boring, so not interesting, and so hard. And then I blame myself for not able to doing it, and then I get depressed, then I push myself more. But with this book, Atomic Habit, it's all about treat yourself well, and work with yourself, and to make yourself to do things as easy as possible, to really clear all the obstacles for you to do the habits. Just make your life as easy as possible, then you can do all the things. And I realized, in order to have a productive life, the key is to be nice to myself, not be harsh to myself.
Wow, that's really profound.
Yeah, like then I with these three books, I developed this routine. Is like every day I wake up, I meditate, I take my medication, I write my morning journal, I eat breakfast, I walk my dogs, I come back, I write my to-do list, and I write some daily tooth, and what else I have? I think I brush my teeth and I shower and I do sports. Those are the 10 steps. And in the Atomic Habit in this book is really good. It teaches you how to make it easy to follow, and they have lots of techniques.
Right.
For example, you time a few techniques is like you trigger a action by time and space, or you trigger an action by the order of your stuff. For example, once you do this thing, immediately you do that thing.
Yeah.
For example, one thing, it sounds stupid, but for people who's depressed, it's very useful. Like when you are depressed, it's very easy. You realize for days you haven't brushed your teeth. This is just normal. And sometimes I'm not in a depressed period, but it still gets slid away sometimes.
Yeah.
And now instead of okay, every day I will brush my teeth. Instead of say that, I just every time I eat, I go brush my teeth. So it's conditioned.
Oh,
So
that's a good idea.
so there's no internal like battle. Oh, I can do it
Yeah.
later, maybe. So by doing this condition, it's not only make it easy to follow, but also it saves your mental capacity of all the internal dialogue.
Should I be doing
Yeah,
it? Oh, I
yeah.
haven't brushed them yet.
Yeah.
That's terrible. I'm a bad person.
Yeah, should I do it
Yeah.
later? Maybe. Yeah, so you don't need to keep optimize, keep negotiate, because there's no negotiation. Once you eat, you brush your teeth.
Oh, that's really good. So I'm going to get that book, Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really good. So do you ever have a hard time cleaning, or is cleaning easy for you?
I used to have but I think this year I've been doing really great, because now I have the routines and the way of to do my daily task. So nowadays it's almost like a automatic. Like I wake up, I tidy my room a little bit, and before I sit down to actually work, I always like to vacuum or do something. Always make it tidy. It gives me lots of pleasure now, but it was a process.
Okay, that's really inspiring. That's really good. I'm glad we turned this around and I was able to ask you some questions, because that's really helpful. Cleaning for me is really hard, and I don't know why, because when I do it I feel good after, but getting started, it's that initial initiative.
Oh, I think also because you have a job. For me, I do so much cleaning. It's also because I don't have a job, and so I don't have time pressure. I realized when I had a job, cleaning in the evening was so hard. I cannot clean in the evening, because in the evening I want to either be productive or being social, or do something nice. I'm never in the mood to clean in the evening. But during the day, when I wake up, I just like to set the stage for me to work later.
Yeah.
And I have a habit. I like to listen to audiobook, and I have a Bluetooth headphone. So I put it on, and with a good book, and then I clean and I cook. It's really pleasant.
I should do the audiobook, because here's the thing I found about cleaning. If I am talking to somebody on the phone, like I put on my Bluetooth and I'm talking to a friend or one of my brothers, and then I can clean. All of that, whatever that emotional barrier is to cleaning, is not there when I'm connected with somebody. So maybe if I start doing some of the audiobooks, that would actually be enough for me to clean. This is better than therapy, being on your podcast.
I think audiobook is also a big discovery I had this year. I learned so much more from audiobooks than therapy, because therapy, I told her about my issue, she listens, and she sometimes comments a little bit, but with the books it's like a comprehensive training. They tell you you learn lots of different stuff and different perspective. And if you pick the book right, they are very positive and very reassuring.
Yeah.
And you learn so much, and it puts you in a flow state so easily. Like sometimes I put the audiobook on and I clean and I cook. Easily 2-3 hours passed, and not only you feel like, oh, your mind is nurtured, you learn something, you make your living environment clean, but also it's kind of like sports. You move your body, and afterwards you just feel good.
That's really great. Yeah, I love that. And you're right. You do learn interesting things, and therapy is. I'd be curious to hear your experience with therapy. In my experience, there is occasionally a very rare therapist, and I haven't done a lot of therapy, but I've tried a lot of therapists. But there's occasionally a rare therapist who kind of gets you, and and you feel like they're on your side, right? You feel like they're a peer, not this person who's kind of above. And then they make you laugh, or you make them. This is my test. If I can make them laugh, I'll trust them more. And I'm not always funny, but it's the spirit of can we joke about this, or are you going to be serious? But mostly they just do what you're talking about, which is they're going to listen to you and maybe say something. And you're like paying a lot of money for somebody to be basically your friend for an hour. And they're not even that great a friend, you can't you can't text them later.
This year, like I adopt this technique. It's called morning pages. Have you heard about this concept?
Oh yeah, I have a friend who does that. It looks really good. You do like a few gratitudes, and what else? You tell me what the things
actually,
are.
that's not the concept.
Okay.
The concept is super easy. It's every day you wake up. The first thing you do, you open A5 notebook, and you write whatever coming into your mind for 3 pages.
Oh, from the artist's way.
Yeah. And a combination of the artist, the morning pages, and reading books. The two combination, it gave me so much breakthrough. I get so much done from therapy. And it's just this year is just breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough. You heard about my story of the relationship I had with my mom. I remember last year I told my therapist, like, she tries to mention like, oh, how are you dealing with it? I'm like, I don't think I ever be able to digest it. It's just like it's too much for me, and I don't think I ever find peace in it. But then while writing itself, is somehow it just resolved itself.
That's really great. That is another topic that's really powerful. Is in your case, it was you and your mother, but almost everybody has a family dynamic. Sometimes it's with a parent, sometimes it's with their siblings. Do you have siblings?
No.
Okay. So for people who do, they will almost always have feuds and fights. And I've done both. And when you can get to a point where in your heart, you really no longer just hold that grudge blindly. You're like, okay, this is a person that they hurt, and they're doing the best they can. And even if they're being an asshole to me, it doesn't serve me to be an asshole to them. It's going to serve me a lot better to give them kindness. And so this became a practice for me, was to be kindness, because I was a real asshole to a couple of my brothers and to my mom. And I could argue that they deserved it in different ways, especially the brothers. But but ultimately, it's like, who wins when you do that? I don't know. I don't win. You feel kind of good, self-righteous, but it's not a happy feeling. And so for me to learn how to let go of that resentment, because I wanted, this was my dream, right? I wanted to be resentful of my family that I was mad at and really happy at the same time. To me, that was like, but then they're mutually exclusive. Maybe not for everybody. I know people who say, nope, I have resentments and I'm happy. And that's great that they can do that. I couldn't. I tried. I tried. So your story about your mom was really beautiful in that way, because you came full circle, and it was done in such a powerful way. It was and it was really, really, it's cathartic for people to hear that, because everybody has these relationship challenges with family, and to see somebody coming through and treating somebody with love instead of that fear and resentment is just such a beautiful thing.
Do you know metta meditation?
Metta meditation?
Yeah.
No, what is it?
Metta is a polyterm. The direct English translation is loving kindness. Since this year, I start to practice this meditation. It's actually really simple. Like you start with think about someone you really have very good feeling to, uncomplicated, not romantic relationship. Just imagine them, picture them, want everything great for them, and then you carry away this feeling and to hope everything best for you, free of suffering, free of pain. And then you move to a random person on the street. You just hope them to be happy, and you pray for them, and you want to send the positive energy for them. And eventually you move to someone who you have difficult relationship, and to see that no matter who they are now, they once was an innocent baby coming into the world and destined to become the person they are.
Yeah.
And then you see, okay, like they are also the victim of the environment they have experienced. I start to practice this meditation this year, and it's very, very simple. Maybe like on waking up, the meditation app, there's like 5 sessions about it. So now every like a month or so, I revisit it, and it really, really helps, like to feel the kindness for others. And a very big breakthrough I made this year is also like in the past I feel like everyone hates me, everyone think negative about me, and via meditation I realized that first, it's not true. Second, even people feel negative feelings for me, it can be changed. By thinking about they hate me, so I hate them, it won't change. But if I start to send positive vibes and send the love and send the energy, eventually I can feel the energy back. And I've been practicing that, and it really, really works. And I think this really helped me a lot. And with the I mentioned at the mental health festival, I had a breakup with my my long-term partner.
Yeah.
And in this relationship for 3.5 years, for the majority of time, I feel rejected. Like on one hand, we are in a very committed relationship, but on the other hand, some part of him always make me feel I'm not desired, I'm not his choice, and he's stuck with me. And after the breakup, very like rather fast, I by listening to audiobook really changed me a lot.
I can
So
tell, yeah.
after the breakup, the first day I was feeling so surreal. I was like a walking zombie, but then I know if I stay in bed, I will be depressed for sure. So every day I go out, walk the dogs for like 8 hours. I just put my headphones
8
in.
hours.
Yeah, I put my headphone in. I listen to audiobooks, and I first I start to listen books about how to fix relationships, and and then after like 2-3 books, I start to listen how to accept breakups, and then very soon, like 3-4 days, I start to realize, oh, actually, it's not that bad.
That's really healthy.
Yeah.
That's super healthy. Wow. Yeah, you're inspiring me.
Yeah,
That's
and
really
after
great.
a month breakup, I start to see someone else, and and eventually I told my ex-partner, and he got really shocked, and he was like really emotional. And the second day, he told me he had a breakdown. He cried for me, and his heart is broken. And I felt quite happy because I feel, oh, for 3.5 years together, you always made me feel okay. I'm not desired.
Yeah.
And every time we have like crisis, it's always me crying, and you are there. Like I just feel like I'm not important. You never like cried for me, and it's always you rejecting me. And when he told me he cried for me, he had a breakdown, I realized, okay, the reason why he never cried for me is just because I was so engaged in this relationship. He never believed that he'll lose me. So even after the breakup, he still thinks, okay, if he can deal with his issues and he changed his mind in 1 or 2 years, I'll still be there for him. And so for him, the breakup never kicked in because he always thinks it's his decision. If one day he wants me, we can still be together.
Yeah.
And the moment I start to see someone else, I'm not available anymore. The reality finally kicked in his brain, and he finally realized he lost me, and he cried. And I kind of like feel happy. I was like, you see, like actually you wanted me. You just, but the reason why you are not sad is just because you never lost me. You never feel the fear of losing me.
Yeah.
And I feel happy for a few days. And after a few days, I start to revisiting the metta meditation, and the kind of love and the care, all the good memories about him coming up, and that happiness of him getting hurt totally gone. And I start to really think all the good things, all the good memories, all the good changes this relationship and he brought me. And yesterday we had our like first like a real talk after the breakup, and it was very emotional. He told me many good things about me. And today I woke up, he wrote me a message. He told me that he never loved me so much. He reached the peak of how much he loves me right now.
Yeah.
But it's not a love of like a romantic in love feeling, but it's just this kind of tremendous gratitude and appreciate of each other, and I feel this kindness towards each other, and how much we inspire each other, and how happy he has me in his life. And I feel so touched, and I just realized, oh, okay, this is really a mark of personal growth in my life, that to be able to feel this love for each other even after a relationship has ended. And I really think that metta meditation really played a vital role in it. And also this technique, the tool of morning pages. I got hooked up to this tool earlier this year.
Yeah.
I told this tool to my ex-partner. Since a month ago, he started to do it daily also. And he also said that to be able to reach to this point from so depressed and anger at me to now feeling this unconditional love towards me really can how to say it's the magic of morning pages.
That's very healthy. That's really beautiful. Yeah, yeah.
I really, really recommend anyone to do it. Not only artists, but anyone.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's really powerful. Yeah, I love all of that. That's really great. I feel like we should start this interview at the point where we started talking about you.
No.
That's when the podcast got really interesting because you've been on a journey and you've learned a lot. Can we talk about your story? And you're not spoiling anything for people who might see your show.
The story, we can talk about it. What do you want to talk about?
Specific questions. So what I want to know is you must have had a first time in your life or somewhere around there, maybe a few, where you started like wondering, maybe my mom is just somebody who is, has her own pain, and this is what because you go from being a kid, your parents are kind of like God, because they literally are the world to you, to eventually there's something else, and then at some point you realize, oh, they're just a person and they have their own issues, their own pain, their own journey. When did you start to notice that about your mom?
Very recently, maybe this year, March, April, somewhere there.
Wow. So it was around the time you started doing all this work.
Yeah. This year, like people all shit about the pandemic, but this year is like the peak of my mental health.
Wow.
I learned so much. I gained so much strength.
That's really great. That's really great. Yeah, yeah. Okay, I don't think I have any more questions. Not that I'm the one asking questions, but I feel like we've covered everything.
And with you about addiction, do you have what made you to start to do public speaking? Was it any specific events happened?
Yeah, specifically what happened is, I had dated a girl for a few months, and then I had broken up with her, and then she had said, okay, that's okay, because, but I don't want to be your friend. And I said, okay, I will honor that. And then somehow, like 10 months later or something, or 9 months later, we wound up having a text exchange, and we were just as friends going to get together. And she told me there's this storytelling night, and we were going to meet at this coffee house to do storytelling. And then she dissed me, like at the last minute. She goes, oh, I'm not going to be there, I got a better offer. And I'm like, was she setting me up this whole time or whatever? But it didn't matter, because I went and I watched the storytelling, and what I saw was people just talking about what was going on in their life at that moment. And it was such raw emotion, and it was I was like really taken with it. Like one person up there was talking, he was a man who was a phone sex operator, and who would pretend to be a woman on the phone, and he had hid this from his family, but he's apparently very good at it. And and his family had found out somehow, and so he's telling this story, and it's so emotional because his mom and his sister are supporting him. And then while he's on stage telling this story, he gets a text from his mom saying, your sister and I just want you to know that we love you, and something like that. And I'm like, whoa, this is like life happening. This is more real than anything I've ever, And so, I used to do stand-up comedy when I was younger. I was never that good at it. Like, I was always a little too crazy. I mean, I could do well sometimes. I could kill, but then I would get real work and I would eat it, and it was pretty awkward, honestly. The but so I thought, maybe I could do storytelling now. It's a different stage of my life, and I told a story about a group of high school friends, a chess team, and then one of them having a psychotic break, and our whole little circle of friends breaking up after that. And so I told the story, and it was and I put humor in it, and people appreciated hearing about that emotional journey. And then I started talking about some of the things I had been through, because I had lost a lot of weight. I had lost like over 100 pounds. I had learned how to overcome social anxiety. Like I used to be so afraid to talk to people. I couldn't go to a party. I would bail. Like if I did go, I would have to leave within 5 minutes. I would just freak out.
Me too.
Really?
Yeah, I'm still like that, but now I learned is that I cannot go to a party who I don't know anyone. But when I host my own party, I'm fine.
Yeah, around people you know already. Yeah. And meeting strangers was hard. So I had learned how to overcome that. I would tell stories about these things, or about but about things, because I had been through, everybody has a really big journey. Mine just happens to be a little easier to measure because addiction, mental illness, and then learning how to live better. But so I would tell about these little parts of my journey, and oftentimes with a little transformation, like something I learned or something I started shifted. People love that in a story, and you have that in your story. It's very powerful. And then people would appreciate it. And then so I met people who were mental health advocates, because there weren't a lot of people talking about mental health stuff. And then they introduced me to other people, and then I got involved in mental health advocacy, and then I started doing speaking, and then I got some training, and then I started coaching storytellers and putting together mental health storytelling shows, and then pitching TED Talks, and then becoming a speaker coach for mental health people. I lead a workshop once a month that are really great for a particular organization, and then I do some other things as well. So it was kind of a natural evolution, because an ex-girlfriend dissed me.
Were you creative in any ways before that?
I've always been pretty creative. Yeah, I've always been creating. After I failed at stand up, I started doing a lot of sketch comedy, and I I've written a manuscript about my journey in drug addiction, and I couldn't return to it. It was too painful. I finished it in 2009, and I'm just now reworking it and putting it into a proposal. And I've written a TV show before, but we didn't know what we were doing. But I've been working with a partner steadily now. We're writing a sitcom about mental health, about mental health advocates. And we've been learning actually how to do it right, which is harder than I thought. I thought it was easy. It's really hard for me to learn the concepts, but we're learning. We're getting, doing classes and just rewriting it,
Cool.
and getting instruction. And so that's kind of like the next level for me of advocacy. It's like you can do a certain amount as a speaker, but the problem with mental health speaking is that nobody really watches a mental health speaker who isn't directly attached to the subject. So if you want to, this is my theory anyways, if you want to expand the conversation and help to normalize the conversation with the general population, then the most powerful way to do it would be with mainstream entertainment. So that's what I'm trying to work on. I feel like I've gone about as far as I can as a speaker, and there's so many people out there with so many great stories. I don't think I add that much to the conversation anymore. When I started it, it was a bit more novel, and there weren't so many people doing it. Now there's a lot of people, and I watch them, and I'm like, that's so powerful a story, and they're such a great speaker. So I'm less I'm really less focused on that. I still do it when I get called up, and I love helping people tell their stories, but I don't really promote myself or work that hard to get work as a speaker anymore.
Wow, that's a really interesting project. So very exciting. I start to do mental health project since also this year.
Yeah.
I realized, wow, from normal artist point of view, like they think, oh, why are you limited yourself to mental health? But I realized it actually adds so many different angles. Like when you have a theme, you can be so creative around it, and there are so many possible ways, and it's indefinite.
I agree, and I think that there's very little like. I think of it as like the invisible world, our inner lives, the things we think, the things we feel, the things that go on that we don't talk about or acknowledge much, the things that they won't put in like a basic sitcom because it's a little bit challenging. This is what's so interesting and what connects us all. So yes, mental health is maybe not everybody, but the people who understand it, which is more people than admit it, I
Yeah.
think by far, right?
Yeah. Like since I started to talk openly about my mental health, like at any parties, there's always someone eventually will tell me, oh yeah, actually my sister is very sick.
Yes,
Or
right?
my husband is very sick.
Yeah. So to me, it's not a niche that you have to stay in, but it's a very powerful thing because it might be a smaller percentage of the population, but the power of the emotional connection between them and the hunger for that connection is greater because having a mental health issue is very isolating
Yeah.
because for one thing, it makes you think you suck and that nobody wants to be around you. Sometimes it makes you into an asshole, so they really don't want to be around you. And either way, a lot of people, if they find out you have a mental health issue, they don't want to know you. They like want the well-adjusted people or the people who at least pretend to be well-adjusted.
I think to talk about it openly is also very important in a way. Is that, for example, I've been in this journey for 4 years now. All those like powerful tools I only learned this year, and for the first 3 years I was like I had almost no control in it. Like I just go into breakdown for a week, and then I don't know what to do. I just let it happen. But now I know, okay, I feel a little bit depressed today. What I do, I cancel all my appointments. I do sports, I write, I watch something I like, and the second day I wake up, I follow 10 steps, I'm back in track.
Yeah.
But I didn't know before, and it's not rocket science. It's very easy to pass on, but there's just not enough people are raising the voice. If there's someone sharing me these tips 4 years ago, I might not like adapt it immediately, but maybe like after 1 year, if people keep talking about the same thing, I might already be with all those tools a few years earlier.
Possibly, yeah, yeah. And for sure, if it had been less stigmatizing, you might have found out earlier that you
Yeah.
have depression because,
Yeah.
it's nobody jumps to that conclusion
Yeah.
if it's not something that's even talked about.
Yeah.
I know somebody who, when they were young, they, they their parents were so ashamed that they had a bipolar condition that they drove across state lines to a whole other state to see a doctor. And they were like, don't ever tell anybody because it will ruin your life.
Yeah.
And because that's the stigma we deal with. And I will say this too, in some countries, like as bad as it is in the Western world, America, or I don't know a lot about what it's like in Germany, but I do in America, which is fairly progressive, but it's still very, very stigmatized. And then you go to Pakistan. I know because I met a woman in Canada who was from Pakistan, and I'm like, why are you here? And she said, well, because my brother is bipolar, so the whole family had to leave because we wouldn't have been able to work and live. And I'm like, whoa, that's a level of stigma that
Yeah.
I didn't know about.
Yeah. I think like dealing with mental health is also a journey of overcoming shame. Like everything around is about shame, and by achieving good mental health, it's a journey of like overcoming all different kind of types of shame.
Yeah.
And it's a very long journey, and I'm still battling lots of shames now. It's never ending. Like the the moment I feel, oh, I'm in a good place, then I discover something. Oh, actually, I've been ashamed about this thing for very long. I just never noticed, because when you are ashamed, you don't know you are ashamed. You just behave in a certain way, and the one day you have the capacity to stand aside and look at you and why I've been behaving that way the whole time. You realize, oh, it's because I was ashamed by something.
Yeah, yeah. That's really powerful. I feel like I'm getting free therapy.
So at the end of the podcast, I want to ask you, like, if you know, there's some audience who has bipolar now, and you can share a few sentences with them, what would you share with them?
Yeah, my message is really, really simple, which is that number one, you're not alone. A lot of people live with bipolar, and a lot of people who don't have certain features of it. Like, this is just human experience. And it's kind of like you get to have a bigger experience of life. Yes, it can create some problems for you, but you also, like, don't go through life emotionally shut down. You get to experience a lot of emotions, which in a way is a gift.
Yeah.
There are gifts from bipolar, but you're not a bad person. I think that a lot of people think that they're inadequate or they're damaged. You're not. You have a different makeup. The idea that it's bad is man-made. Like if you go into a forest and you see trees and one grows this way or one didn't grow as tall or one's bent, do you think that tree is a bad tree? No, of course not. It's just nature happening. So you're not a freak. And then the last thing I would say is that, there are a lot of people who are bipolar who have learned how to live really well. And I can't tell you how to do it because there's so many different ways. And I've talked to so many people who've learned how to live well with bipolar, and they each have a different path. There are some patterns, but there's not one pattern that is true for everybody. But like, there is a way you can learn how to live really well. So, I guess I would just say, like, my heart goes out to you. I care about you. I feel a full heart thinking of you and wishing you well. So that's really it. I want you all to feel good and enjoy life.
And for addiction, if someone who's dealing with addiction problem, what do you think the easiest thing they can do to feel a bit better?
So here's what you can do is just don't assume like I spent 14 years in addiction because I was arrogant and I couldn't admit that I didn't have control over it and that other people could help me get better. If I had at the beginning said, you know what, I have a problem, I can't control it, and other people can help me control it, and I should ask for help and take it. If I had done that, I would have saved 14 years. So I don't know if that's going to help anybody with addiction, but that's the one thing that really changed. And I'm kind of as arrogant as the next guy, and it took me a long time to realize like it wasn't helping me.
I really resonate with this. Not me myself. Like the last episode I did with Ben, who's my former supervisor from my corporate job. He used to be an alcoholic, and he told me the first step of dealing with the alcohol issue is to admit that you have no control over alcohol. Like you don't have a choice, and you cannot manage to drink in a sustainable way. And once you realize that, then you can go to the following. But if you are so arrogant, believe, oh, it's everything under control, and people don't understand it, then it's just impossible.
Yeah, right. That's really true. And you always like, you know, addicts are always trying to figure out like, okay, I can still get high and be clean at the same time. It's like this is what we want, and eventually giving up on that is healthy. And it sucks because I would like to smoke pot once in a while, and I can't, and it wouldn't hurt me if I did, except for the fact that I'm an addict and I know
So
I have other
for
consequences.
you really cannot smoke weed. If you smoke weed, what would happen?
I think I would get depressed.
Okay.
I think I would, you know, and you also get a certain amount of pride in your clean time. So now, you know, now I kind of like, I'm a little bit arrogant about it. And I don't mean to be, I am admitting it to sort of shame myself a little bit, I guess, because if I smoke a joint, then I lose that clean time. So now, but more than that, I will tell you a story. And so I went to Amsterdam about a month ago. I've never been. And my brain started thinking of a plan to get high. And, you know, marijuana is legal where I come from. It's not like I'm suddenly able to have something I couldn't have. But I'm like, maybe I'll buy cookies and one has marijuana and one doesn't. And then I'll accidentally eat the wrong one. And I'm like, there's so many things wrong. There's so many things wrong with that plan. I don't even want to start. But I literally went through this, and I wound up buying a space cake, journey around that. And then I walked around for about a half hour with it. And I said, okay, I can't do this. You know, it was like, okay, either I just knew my addiction will pick up. It's like, if I get high once, I will want to get high again. And it starts, and then eventually I'll start getting high more and more, and it will affect my life. And then I will start going back to hard drugs. So for me, the cliff is too steep. For some people, if they smoke pot, they're just like, you know, a little bit lazy and dopey if they smoke it every day. But other people smoke it every day and they seem fine. But for me, it would end in me going off a cliff. And I know that. And it sucks because I would really like to get high, but I can't because of that. But it's all right. I'd much rather have my clean time, you know.
I'm trying to understand you because I'm not an addict, but I use drugs very often. I don't know if that means I'm an addict, but I can easily not use it for very long, and I don't have the craving, but I just like weed.
Yeah, no, I love weed.
So I was thinking, like, I just couldn't understand, like, why you cannot use weed. But then I start to imagine myself, myself into your shoes, that I have eating disorder. So, like, for me, like, eating a whole plate of French fries, like, it will not make me fat or make me whatever if it's just one plate. But it's the shame and the disgust I have that will be triggered by eating this plate of fries. And once this shame has been triggered, I will be in a vicious circle, and I start to eat more and more, and I couldn't stop, and eventually I lie in bed hating myself. I think probably it's similar to you.
It's kind of similar. And I mean, the difference, and I think part of the difference for me, right, because if you can smoke marijuana and not have to smoke it, for me it was chronic. Like, I had to get high every day, and I had to get too high. You know, you know, I would get like so high that I couldn't, you know, it was hard. Like, I would just sit there on the couch. I should get up and go to the bathroom, but I don't want to get up because I'm so stoned. And I would just get too stoned every time, right away, every day. And it was not fun, but so I could never moderate. Other people, they moderate. They're like, I get stoned a little bit, and they have fun. And I believe that people have better living through drugs and alcohol.
I think that's also similar to my eating disorder. Like, there's definitely people, they can just enjoy French fries, like a few pieces of it. and I just have to eat everything and hate myself.
Yes, yes. That's a really great parallel. It is like that. And then in my case, I have the extra problem of I have a cliff to go off, which is that if I start doing hard drugs again, I will lose everything, and I don't think I will build back again. I was one of many, many very lucky, not many, I mean, I was one of few very lucky people who get to build back again. If I lose it on hard drugs again, I'm not coming back. I'm going to be derelict, and that scares me. Yeah.
Cool. I'm very happy we had the analogy because I always have issues to understand addicts because I'm not addicted to, like for me, I hate alcohol. I don't want it at all. And I try the cocaine sometimes. I just don't like it. I use MDMA a few times. Like I like it, but I wouldn't say okay. I want it again. Like soon.
Yeah, that's probably at the top of my list if I was going to do drugs again of
If
drugs I want to do.
I smoke weed often, but I can easily go to not smoke weed for 6 months or something.
Oh, really?
Like it's and actually last year during quarantine, I stopped smoking completely for 6 months. And I was quite proud of it. I was like, oh, I'm sober. I don't need weed. I'm so productive. And then the day I smoked, the day immediately I realized, oh, this is good for me. Because for 6 months, I thought I was productive, but I was in a very anxious mode. And I thought, oh, if I don't do this work, I am a piece of shit. And I was shut down so many emotions inside of me. And once I start to smoke, I realized, oh, okay, I haven't been dealing with lots of things for a while, and I've been very harsh for myself for a while. So for me, weed is really good, but I wouldn't say I'm addicted.
You're probably not. Like a lot of people use weed and they aren't addicted, and it does enhance your life. I think it's good for people in a lot of ways. And the same thing with drinking. I think a lot of people drink regularly and they have better lives because of it. And honestly, like some of us are addicts. We go too far and then we go and we do things we shouldn't do, like cocaine and crack and heroin, and then we fall off the cliff, right? We start, and then but for people who don't, I think that it just enhances life.
I think the conversation with you really made me start to understand what addicts feels like because I just cannot understand them. But now I start to
now you can identify with it a little bit
of my eating disorder. Like I really have no control of it, it's not only the substance itself, but it's the emotions it will trigger, and the self-blame it will trigger myself in, and then into a downward spiral.
It's a weird thing because like you're eating it to feel better, and yet it makes you feel worse. This is the fascinating thing about addiction, and that said, like it is an emotional need to eat it, but I know that downward spiral. I know it completely. So good. I'm glad you have that parallel because now you really do understand addiction, and this conversation is making me want French fries and weed. I'll probably just have some French fries.
I'll probably just have some weed.
Nice.
Cool. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This was great. I appreciate it. It was great getting to chat about all these things.
Cool. Thank you, audience. Hope you learned something in this episode. And if you are listening, my next solo show is on 17th of December. And I will do a few more sessions in Berlin. It's called Child from Wuhan. You can find the ticket at www.monizhang.com. And also you can, if you like my work, you can support me on Patreon. And just sponsor me €3 or €5 per month and support my work.
All right. Thank you so much,
Thank
Moni.
you.
It's been a real joy. Thank
Ciao,
you.
ciao.